The end of the first parak. Okay. Hit this before Mizbeach. I wasn't clear about this last time we talked about this. This means that he takes a bechor balmum and he still says it's hektish. Why? It can't be korban. No, his purpose is that it should go to the bedek habayis. But what is bedek habayis going to do with the blemished animal? The answer: bedek habayis sells the blemished animal, not the British animal, the blemished animal, and that money goes to the temple's funds. So bedek habayis is the general temple fund. We said sometimes even bedek habayis in the pinch, that's where you get the korbanos from themselves, and that's how we answered that question. If the Rambam paskins, there is no machatzis a shekel when the temple's not standing, but there is a mitzvah to bring the korban tamid when the temple's not standing. So where do you get the funds to bring those korbanos when the temple's not standing? And the answer is bedek habayis. Bedek habayis always exists. Person shouldn't do it, but technically speaking, when we want to start the korbanos, God willing, tomorrow, so they'll create a bedek habayis fund, and then they'll use that fund from any donations whatsoever to buy the animals, and that's how they'll get the korbanos started again. So it's a good thing. Once the temple sells the temple treasurer sells off this animal, so the meat is not going to be weighed like a normal meat for sale and not sold in the marketplace. Because he can only piece something that could actually be sold completely. Okay. So you can't actually sell this. I'll read you the trend. The commentary here is quite good from Korean. It says, just like the original owner of this animal couldn't take a bechor balmum. Yes, he could eat it, but he has to treat the meat with respect. So he can't sell the meat in an ordinary way. So to the hektish people can't do that either. They're selling off the meat now to raise money for the temple. They still have to do it in a much more respectable manner. Sell it, I guess, wholesale. By the way, that's how we do it. That's how the kohl gets things.
So how do you sell it?
What?
How do you sell it?
Wholesale. One of the things they do is so they don't use litra. Do you ever notice this is something I discovered when I came to Israel? It used to be in America, you go to the butcher shop, and you go to the butcher shop, and you buy your meat by the pound. I actually seen this at the main butcher on Main Street back in Queens back in 2006. Okay, so what do? No, we went to see Malicha, and they don't just do. Back then, they used to sell unsalted meat, even stores here in Israel. So you took it home like your grandmother used to do. You have a roast, and you put it in the colander, and you take the kosher salt, and you soak the meat, and then you sprinkle the salt on it, and then you rinse off the salt again. The whole koshering process our grandmothers used to do all the time. So I saw that they took sides of beef. These are basically a quarter side. That is a side of beef, which is the animal is headless and limbless, but it's basically the whole torso. And the back side, the hind legs, they don't deal with those because that has to get on Russia. But they mostly have the rest of the animal, the whole side of the animal.
It's only Ashkenazi.
Okay, fine. But this is an Ashkenazi place. And then they cut it in half. They have the right side and left side. So this is called a side of beef. A side of beef is basically, it's not as heavy as the whole bull, but it's still a massive thing. So these workers basically take the whole side of beef and they throw it on the big perforated table. That means it has holes. After they had soaked it in the basin for the hour, and then they sprinkle on the salt. The mashkiach is the one throwing salt on it, lots of salt. And then the worker guy takes it and puts it on the big hook. So they salt it, well, it's huge pieces. But they're still not selling it in the shuk. This is the back room where they take the sides of beef and they're selling it and they're salting it. This is just the koshering process. They're not weighing it or anything. They don't really look at the weight. Now, when you come to Israel, you see that sometimes they do this for those, just like they have chalukas here. So they have a chalukah in Mea Sharma and other places. They tell the kohl people are getting a whole box of meats, frozen meats, and here in Israel they sell it by number. And there it's just, well, yeah, it's before Pesach did this. That's when I first saw this because I was a kohl guy in Jerusalem in 2008, and they had this. Everybody sign up for a thing. We got a whole box of frozen chunks of meat, and it's it's basically you get what you get. You buy it by the box. It's like when they sell diamonds. Rabbi Avi told us this. How they used to sell diamonds. You get raw, uncut diamonds, a huge box of them. Well,
now?
They do this now, and they used to do this in the old days. His Rabbi Braunspiegel, his father was a diamond dealer before and after the Holocaust. So he says what you used to get was a box about this big of raw diamonds, and then you go through them, you polish some, you cut some. Some are not as valuable as others, and on average, it's worth your purchase. So that's the same way they do esrogim, by the way. What does the esrog dealer do? He buys wholesale, just a whole boxes and boxes of esrogs, and then it's his job to go through them and find the nice ones and price them, and hopefully he'll sell them. Which is by the way, I tell people, if you want to buy a nice esrog at a good price, do not go to Mea Sharim and the other esrog sales where everybody's going over them fine tooth combs and the magnifying glass. Go to the type of place where people unfortunately don't really care so much, because they get a lot of wholesale, and get there first, and then just pick the nicest esrog, because the guy just says, I'm selling every esrog for what, 40 shekels.
Wow.
Right? He doesn't grade them. I used to do this with my father. Yeah. Where do they used to do this? The guy here used to do it. Okay. Before he grades the esrogs and picks out the 200 shekel esrogs, you get there and you just take, whatever it is. So that's what you should do. So too, with this meat, how the Beis Hamikdash deal with this meat? They cut it in the back room, but they just package it up and they sell it, bechor meat, and they sell it to whoever's willing to buy random pieces without looking at them, without weighing them, without sight unseen. And by the way, the institutions would buy that meat, or the people buy it for the kollel. You get what you get. So someone gets the 6 and someone gets the 2, which are the more expensive cuts, I guess, and the 1. And some people get the 8 and the 9 or the 10. You shop here in Israel. 8 is basically, they say it's good for cholent meat and stews, but it's not like you have to cook it for 4 hours, and you can't really slice it, thin and all that. And 6 is more like a roast that you could actually, brisket type of thing. It's not brisket, but whatever. We'll talk about culinary things tomorrow. You were with us last week, 2 weeks ago. You remember you saw what I was slicing? So that was a real cut. The regular stuff is less. Okay. So let's go into the second parak. We mentioned that all the blemishes that they have in common, both man and beast, those are 50, and we mentioned them where? In Bias Mikdash. That was the previous set of halachas. Now the Rambam is talking about Psula Mikdashim. So even though in Bias Mikdash he mentioned blemishes of animals that might be korbanot, now he's talking about blemishes that are specifically for animals. And by the way, the Shulchan Aruch mentions these things. Why? Because practical for a Taurus Bechor. We still have firstborn animals, and technically speaking, a firstborn animal should be a korban. But so what we do, we wait for it to develop a blemish, and then we could eat it as chulin. That's what we do. So in order to says the smicha nowadays is patterned after what? They asked him, can he rule on Isser v'heter? So he said, to rule on Isser v'heter, what's the verb? Yoreh. So that's Yoreh smicha now. They say, the guy could answer shilas about kashrus and Shabbos. And they said, can he act as a rabbinic judge? Does he know Choshen Mishpat? Yadin, let him judge. Yadin, let him judge. And they said, does he even have the authority granted by the Nasi or the exilarch to do what? To matir bechor. To say that this bechor has mumin. Can he look at a mumin and say, this bechor is no longer holy because it's developed a blemish? So that's called yatir. You know any rabbanim who yatir? You get smicha for it because it's in Shulchan Aruch, and it's saying that's practical. I never met ask Rav Shechter. I know that Rav Shechter gives yad smicha to the guys in his kollel, and Rabbi Soloveitchik used to give it. And there's kollels here. Obviously, in America, there's a few places where they do it. Yes, it is. Yatir.
No, because now they do shoot with the guy in the neck.
They shoot this with the guy. It removes the bechor.
Yeah,
okay. I forgot about that. Okay. I hope they shouldn't do shittas with the goy just to get out of these things. But it happens for people privately owned. I'm not talking about slaughterhouses. People privately own animals. Remember they did that thing at the park? They had a pidyon peter hamor. That's a shtick they do now. Because many people in the olden days, having a pidyon peter hamor or a horse, whatever it is, the non-kosher animal, people used to live much more agricultural societies and had animals. So it was a normal mitzvah that they do. But nowadays, you live in our type societies, whoever has a pidyon peter hamor happen. So whenever it happens, the Hasidim make a whole big party. So we had to do that too. They did this back in 2009 in the park. Rav Tatar was there, and they gave Moshe Cohen, the Ed guy, they gave him a sheep. They had the guy had, remember that? They had that sheep in the yard. You walk past the yard, so you hear like that, like what? Oh, they're doing a pidyon peter hamor soon. And they got a whole wreath, a thing of flowers to put on the donkey, and they had a whole thing. Every rabbi had to give a speech about it. I got to see it, and sorry I didn't get to show it to the kids, but that used to be a thing. And sometimes they raffle off the mitzvah to do it. They know that there's a she donkey that is to be giving birth, so they raffle off the mitzvah. They use it as a fundraiser for some kol guy to win this mitzvah to get a peter hamor, and then he could do the redemption. Okay, so they do this nowadays. So this is a nafkamina la'alocha. So if a person is yatir smicha, that's pretty impressive. I never met anybody like that. But nowadays here in Israel, they take it very, very seriously. Just like the Rabbanut Smicha is considered a real deal, so too Rabbanut Dayanut Smicha is a real serious thing. And there are people who they invest a lot to get it. Okay, let's see the halacha. I'm sorry I didn't put it on the screen for those watching at home, but we'll do it here. Issurei Mizbeach, Hakol. We're going to start in the second parak. So these are the mumin. Let's get into them. We're doing this because it's Torah, and the Rambam has a list over here. I should share it. Many of us, this isn't going to happen. It used to be. Eventually, in the base of Mikdash, they had korbanos available, very pre-checked ones, and even for private citizens, there are people who sold these things, made them available, wholesalers. But for people who used to have, as a very common thing, their own animals, this is something they had to know, prevent the animals from developing blemishes. Okay, there are certain blemishes that blemish animals, but not people. What if a person has them? So what? He's not blemished. It's specifically for animals and the things that animals have. That is, they're the way their bodies work. So there's 23 of them. Here's the list. Its eye is as round as that of a human. Animals aren't supposed to have human-like eyes. Okay, animals have animal-like eyes. If you want to see it, go get yourself a sheep or a cow. What?
The pupils?
They're yeah, it's basically like that. Look, they have some pictures over here.
It's like
rectangular. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Look at this. This is a goat eye right there. They have a photograph. See, you can tell it's not a person. We're only dealing with three animals. We're dealing with bovine, Taurus, that is the Latin name, goats and sheep. Okay, there might very well be an animal out there that has more human-like eyes, like some chimps. But it doesn't mean that all animals have non-human eyes. It's just saying the type of animals that you're supposed to be using as korbanos definitely don't have eyes that look like those of a person. And egel, for example, and cows have huge eyes, totally different shape than humans. Next, I'll read this in here. Those who want to follow mine can follow mine. I'm going to do it in my book. Eina achat gedula kashel egel. One of its eyes is big like that of a calf. Vashniya ketana kashel uaz. And the other eye is much smaller, like that of a duck, okay, or a goose. Sometimes you see there's a barwaz and then there's an awaz, and I always confuse which one's which. The point is, it's a waterfowl that's not to be a korban. Oh, it's totally kosher, but it's just not for the base of mikdash. Well,
What's the difference?
between a duck and a goose?
Yeah.
Well, I used to say, like, Disney terms. They're different. They're different animals. They have different bill shapes and they behave differently. Okay, they have different neck shapes. You can look at pictures. Okay. They are not exactly the same thing. They're related and they're both kosher, but they're not the same species.
Yeah,
Really, you've had goose? I've never had goose. I went to the butcher today, earlier this week. They had no duck, they had no turkey, no nothing. Apparently, there's a mashkiach strike here in Israel. You heard about that? Yeah, they only have.
Israelis eat duck.
Yeah. Okay. I saw some things. I'm not going to talk about this online. Something. I went to the butcher just this week. I saw something for sale at the butcher instead of like where the turkey's supposed to be, something else entirely. And I was so surprised. And I asked the butcher, like, are you seriously selling this? He's like, yeah. I said, who buys this? Jews or Arabs? He's like, both. Okay, both. So they're both crazy. Next. V'im yesh beloven. Here it says, aval imaita ozen gedula v'ozen ketana. Let's say it has one ear is much bigger and one much smaller. Afilu ketana ad kafol, not kaful. Kafol means small as a bean. It's still kosher. This misshapen ear size, or uneven ear size, is not unblemished. It's kosher. If in the white of its eye it has a yabolet is a wart that actually has a hair growing out of it. Oh, gewalt. What? Yeah.
Very nice.
Why? The eye. Yeah. Sorry, you could get these things. An eye wart. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Look, these things happen. If the skin between the two nostrils is broken up in the place where it's visible, it's basically, this thing's called the septum, but it should be somewhere around here that you can have this cut. So if you could notice this, it's a blemish. Pia domel shel chazir, parus. It's opened up. Afal pisha ino michudad kishapud. They have a picture here of you have that picture there?
Yeah.
How exactly a behema has a certain type of mouth, a kosher behema, whereas a pig has a different type of mouth and different teeth. So if it has a pig-like mouth, it's not kosher. So you should know what a pig looks like. I think we have a picture over here. It shows you. Oh wait, no, I don't have the edition that actually has the photographs. So get yourself.
We have a diagram.
You have a diagram. It doesn't show you actual photographs. Okay.
Yeah.
Pigs are pretty nasty
Oh.
things. You know that pigs would eat people. No, I don't have photographs. I have some photographs, but not all of them. Pigs eat people, by the way, if they're desperate.
Like corpses.
No, pigs would eat people alive. If you have vicious pigs, like the kind of wild pigs you have here, pigs that grow up in the wild, they when people grow pigs, they get all pink and and tame and soft because they have everything. When they grow up in the wild, they suddenly get coarse hair and sharp teeth and tusks. They basically become wild boars, but they're the same species. You let pigs out into the wild, and if they don't get preyed upon right away, they'll multiply and they'll become pretty predatorial themselves, and they will even attack people, and they could even eat people. They'll eat whoever. They'll eat people alive because they're pigs. So it's a terrible thing. Yeah. Yes, there are wild pigs out in the wilds here. Imni kava or shabein, we said that. Pio domer l'shel pazir. Fine. Chiteha chitzonot shenikavu. Those are these things in the back of the throat. It says here l'shanot basar nimtzaot be'omek hachech karov l'lo abeima. You look in the back of its mouth where the tonsils are supposed to be. So if those things have holes in them, they check it in the mouth. It's not kosher. It's kosher for consumption. It's kosher for consumption. It's not considered a treifa. The only thing that would ruin an animal could have all sorts of bad. It have bad eyes and bad teeth, and it looks like a pig and all that stuff. As long as it's a kosher species and it doesn't have a treifut, which isn't something else entirely, something that would, like the Rambam says, something that would kill the animal, then the animal is still kosher. The Mizbeach has higher standards. Osha nigmemu afal pish nishar miksatan. They're some sort of blemish. They're missing something, and they're shriveled a little bit. So they're even if they still have a little bit, these chiteha, these things in the back of the throat. Do you guys have a picture of the chiteha? Can I show you a picture? Okay. Sometimes an animal lets out a big scream, right? They let out a loud moo and they open wide and you can see they're actually missing there. I've never actually looked inside an animal's mouth, so I can't tell you what it's like, but the people who know animals have seen this, that this is something you can notice. They took out their horns. These animals grow horns. Bulls grow horns. Eels grow horns. Goats grow horns. The zachrut is the inner part, the stuff that's actually living inside the horn. You ever make a shofar? They take you to the shofar factory as a kid. So they tell you the way to make a shofar is you have to cut it off the horn, and then you have to scoop out the zachrut, the stuff on the inside. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. Let's say the female grows horns. The female isn't supposed to be growing horns. Female has horns. That's not a problem. If the skin that covers up its member is away, basically, you should know they have, just like human beings are born with foreskins. So animals sometimes have a little skin over there. So if animals don't go through bris milah, so they shouldn't be missing this. That's not that funny, Question is, has anybody here? No one has experience with this. Anybody study milah? Okay, so it's an interesting thing. A lot of animals do have this, and humans have learned this idea. It's a good thing. We should thank God who gave us the os bris, which protects us from a lot of disgusting things that affect men who are uncircumcised. And next, im nifkima ha'erva shel nekeva. Somehow the female genitals are blemished. Okay, I don't know people how they check this, but apparently those who know animals would know this. The tail is divided into two at the atzamim, like that's basically at the base. Tail divided into two. It's supposed to have one tail. If between each vertebrae there's flesh, okay, a finger's worth of flesh, and etzba is basically the equivalent of 2 centimeters in Chazal. Why? Because 4 etzbas is this. A tefach is 8 centimeters. 4 etzbas mean each of these is the thickness of an etzba, so it's basically 2 centimeters. Really? Why? Because the vertebrae are supposed to be right next to each other. They could have a slight gap, but a 2 centimeter gap between the vertebrae that you can notice is already too much. Im haya azanav katzar, short tail. The ad kama, how short is too short? Bagdi chuya achas. Okay, you're dealing with a kid goat, which is basically one in its first year, so it's as long as 1 vertebrae. That's a mum. 2 vertebrae, shtaim is kosher. If you're dealing with a tleh, which is the young lamb, so it's a different standard. Orech shtei chuliyot mum, 2 chuliyos long. So that's a moon, but if it's 3, it's kosher. So you have to know what animal you're dealing with. What about a cow? Why didn't say anything about a cow having a short tail? I don't know. Anybody know? You guys have any commentary there about what the standard for a cow?
No.
Okay, don't know. Okay, well, it's Tarchian. If anybody in TV land has any, YouTube land can tell us, then that'd be helpful. No, I was told. I remember Rabbi Kruger told us back in grade school. He says, when Mashiach comes, basically they didn't have internet back then. You grew up with it. You only had internet. Everything was TV. He says, TV's not kosher. Obviously, it ruins your brain. But he says, God willing, we'll have kosher programming. I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet. That they have just the Shiurim channel. There's always been a Rabbanim since the beginning. Rabbi Teitz, who did Daf Yomi on the radio in Yiddish. Okay, so you have some things, but we've been really slow in getting real content out there. Nowadays they do.
I mean, we have YouTube channels.
Yeah, nowadays we do have. You have Machon Shilo, and I don't know how much better is YU Torah's viewership than ours. By the way, it's great, So that's Gavaldik, who doesn't. You have the whole application, everything. So now you have the shiurim, but we haven't produced anything. It's just rabbis talking, to have actually cartoons and real programming. I wanted to say real explanatory mishnayos with visual aids. If I had the capacity to make a cartoon about that, just showing the Mishneh as it is, that'd be great. So instead, I have to suffice with showing my kids pictures from Machon Mikdash while we learn, Kudshim. That's good, but we learn Bava Mitzia. So there's some pictures, but there's the Baba also, but that's not good. Trying to say that there should be real programming. We could really do this in real good movies also, make Yirmiyahu Navi's Sefer into a real movie. Yeah.
Prince of Egypt. It's not exactly Jewish.
Yeah, I'm not holding of these things real, show it the way it was, and we could really do such things. So we should have had this a long time ago. So he told us that's the way it's going to be when Mashiach comes. And I guess it's a sign that Mashiach isn't here yet, because we're still sufficing with rabbis talking for the cameras and saying the same text again. But we could really go better than that. Next, Nishbar Etzem Hazanav.
To go to the village and see it.
Yeah, Nishbar Etzem Hazanav means that its tailbone is broken. Aval im Nishbar Etzem Itzalotav. Let's say one of its rib bones is broken. The ribs are broken. Still kosher. You can't see that it's broken. Yeah, you can inspect the animal and find. You can X-ray it and see that it has a broken rib, but it's not visible. It's on the inside. It's kind of funny. Most of the the things that make an animal treif are internal, whereas most of the mumim are external and visible. You only discover the treifus when do you do the major treif? After you actually shech the animal and then you open it up, then you do all the checks for the treifus. Did they do that with you guys ever? Go through a shechita? There's a Rav here who does it every year before Pesach, and I'm supposed to join him for that. He's a shochet and a mohel, and he doesn't eat meat. Yeah, and he doesn't eat meat that often. Isn't that funny?
No way.
He was a shochet all these years.
No way.
He basically doesn't eat meat. Yeah, he's very, very limited. Before Pesach, that's when he slaughters, so we'll have meat for the holiday. But other than that, during the year, he's barely eating meat. And he was a mohel, and then he had 10 daughters or something like that, right?
Everyone.
Well, he had a son recently. Yes, he finally had a son. Remember saying, "Oh, you did the bris?" He's like, "Yes, finally." Okay, no, he's a Rosh Hashiva, and this Rosh Hashiva is a shochet, doesn't eat meat. He's a mohel, never got to circumcise a son. He was married for 17 years. Okay, yeah, it happens to the best of us. So you have to know that. So he does a thing in a class. That's when he shechts. He shechts before Pesach. That gives him enough meat for whatever, for Yontif and all that. And then he does a class to show here how you check for treifus. He's a Yemenite, so he'll know how to do this. But and also Rav Gia, the Mohel, who teaches all the other Mohalim. He also is the only rabbi who knew at the Tirgul Korban Pesach how to actually do the Korban Pesach, open it up, check the entrails, skin the animal. All the other rabbis there had no practical experience skinning a goat. He did because he's practical. So the Mohel knows how to do it. Back to this. So it's not Louis. Baal Kamesh Raglaim. If you had an animal with 5 legs, happens. It's a problem with the development in vitro. And 5-legged animal or 3-legged animal is totally kosher. It's not a treifa, but it's a moon. Im ein lo ela shalosh ragaim. Okay, he only has 3 legs. for whatever reason. It could have been, by the way, it could have been he was born that way, or he could have lost a leg. The animal loses a leg, so that's a chasar aver. The other parsasa agula kishel chamor. One of its legs, or its legs means the hind legs. Yadav means the forelegs. Okay, parsasa agula kishel chamor. So you see the hoof; it's rounded like that of a chamor. Chamor doesn't have split hoofs, I think, right? So
That
you can,
animal is kosher.
well,
Is that animal?
that animal is kosher because of a species that have split hoofs. Here you have a picture of what a chamor's hoof looks like. This is a normal split hoof, perfectly kosher. Here's one that's not. That's the donkey's one.
So it's
so-
not the sign that makes the kosher. It's the sign that
Of the species.
that indicates that.
Yeah, it has to be of the species. That's why if you have a freak animal born, let's say, totally normal, Mrs. Cow is having calves, and one calf looks totally wrong. It looks like a pig, but it's 100% a cow. You check its DNA. It doesn't have split hooves, and you never notice it chews its cud, and it looks pig-like. Yes, you should not bring it to the base of Mikdash as a korban, but it's 100% kosher. Yeah, remember, it's a species that matters. Next. Alpha Pisha he Saduka Frusa. Really, it has this aesthetic in there like the kraken. It's like a split hoof, but has this roundedness that makes it look like a donkey's hoof. So that's a moon. Imaisa Raglo Yado Kaluta Kishel Chamor. It's kluta like a chamor. What's the kluta in this case? Means it's caught. That's a kalut in the Torah. What is a kaluta here? What's the exact thing there? You guys have an explanation there? I see the picture. I tried to explain it. I know it's like stuck together. Okay, fine. This is mikubaris. Okay, stuck together. Kalut means stuck. Okay, they got stuck together. By the way, you can have this in person. There are people sometimes have webbed toes and webbed fingers. We mentioned that with the Kohen. We saw the picture of the moon. So it happens. So this is basically that equivalent. Yeah, but a hoof. It's no, but hold on a second. The reason they say hoof is different because a hoof is not built like a toe. Toes have muscles in them. Toes don't have muscle. But they're saying just like you could have a Kohen has webbed toes, so you have now.
It's closer to fingernails.
Yeah, it's closer to fingernails. It's made out of keratin also. Okay, there you go. Next, the last mum is im nigmemu tlafeha bezachrutan imahem afal pishin nishar bezachrutan ma'at karov labasar. So this means that I want to look for the picture of it. Where is it? Do you guys have a picture there?
What?
It means that like it's basically that it's part of the hoof is missing.
No.
What? Or it has been cut. What? You see the picture? You're saying no?
Which halacha?
Okay. Nechtaku parsa sema etzem shebetocha parsos. Okay. The parsot, the hooves have been cut with a little bit of the bone that's actually supposed to be inside the hoof, missing hoof pieces, basically. Guess I have a picture. It'd be pretty terrible to do this to an animal on purpose, just to show you what it's talking about. No, it's pretty bad. You're not allowed to inflict the mum in kachim, and you're not allowed to just cause a mum in an animal. It's Bar-Hayim just for that. Well, yeah. All these mumim, which is a total of 73. Why the 50 in the previous halachos, and now the 23 you just saw. Yeah. Yeah.
Two heads.
Oh well, it doesn't even mention two heads because that's already Rambam's going to say it's included in general prohibition. So that means it can't be a korban. These 73 mumim can't be a korban. Let's say it happened to a tmima that is already been a korban. Suddenly you have a perfectly good sheep, and now it develops mum. So it should be redeemed and become chulin. Gives its money to the temple, and now that it's become chulin again. Unless you have an animal that's too old or sick or just stinks. Okay, some animals just develop a smell. Okay, we said this also about kohanim. Some kohanim are just smelly, so they have. If he can't get over it, so we can't serve. But if he can take it temporarily, get rid of it by bathing and putting on some smell, so we saw that the kohen can then serve, right?
Some people like that in my class.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Don't mention that. What are you gonna do? Shafal pisha eno kasher lekorban eno nifteh. Even though it's not kosher for korban, it cannot be redeemed. Hol zakin and mizoham. Ella yehi kayam v'roeh ad shi v'leid bomum, or as Chazal said, roeh ad she yistayiv. Let it graze until it's disqualified. Mum kavu acher. Sorry, ad shivo bo mum acher kavua mishar mumin. Let it develop an actual mum that's not sickness, old age, or stinkiness, and then it should be redeemed. Okay, but if it's just because of one of these three, can't redeem it. V'chein be'emas kodshim. Let's turn page to stay on the page here. Okay. Shenolad b'mum over ina krevav v'lo niftate. If it has, well, the next mumim that we're going to call transient mumim, so it should not be redeemed and it should not be offered as korban. Just wait. Arba'a mumin ovrim yesh ba b'mo v'adam. Here's the mum overs. The Rambam didn't even mention mum over for people yet. We didn't get to those yet. Here they are. Garav lach. That's it's a wet what do you call it? It's a pus-filled lesions. The boils of Egypt. That's a shchin. Okay. So there's a way to cure these things, by the way. The Egyptians, the shchin didn't last forever, even when they're afflicted by it, right? By the way, that's this week's portion in the annual cycle, the Makos Mitzrayim. Very interesting. Rashi points out, it says, basically, the Ramban echoes this. God gave the Egyptians 3 out of 4 weeks away from Makkahs. That is, yes, God smote the Nile, but it says Pharaoh lo shafli bo gam lazoth. He didn't care. It wore off after a week. By the way, the Egyptians recovered. Egypt became mighty again after the 10 plagues later in history. Why? Because that's the way it works. God smites and smites, and even when he punishes and punishes, he deprives us of rain and there's famine. Eventually, he has to let it up. He's not going to destroy everything for good. Sometimes people get the lesson, sometimes they don't. But eventually wears off. So the Shechin also, they suffered through the Shechin. The question was Pharaoh going to say, you know what, I realized I made a mistake. I should just let the people go now. God kept giving you a chance. That's what harden his heart means. Like the Rambam says in the Hilchot Tshuva, eventually, most people get a chance to repent and realize what they're doing wrong. And Pharaoh, eventually, God took it away from him. God helped him to harden his heart, and so that he would eventually fall into the net and get his full measure of punishment. But the Egyptians had a chance, so much so that even before the 8th plague, what did Pharaoh's own servants say? Enough already. Let them go. We're lost. He's threatening a plague of locusts, kosher locusts, but he's threatening a plague of locusts. Why just let them go? Right? So good question. Chazazit Shena Mitzri. And the shechim that's not Egyptian style. The previous one is Egyptian style, and this is not the drier kind. Okay? Mitzrit, they mean not that people go to Egypt, they suffer from Garav Lach. It's that this they knew the biblical kind that the Egyptians with which the Egyptians were punished in Moses' times. Mayim Shiradin Ba'ayin Ve'enon Kvuin. This animal has a discharge from its eye, but it's not kvuin. He's going to explain this in Halacha Gimel. Okay, eye discharge, but it's not permanent. Or sanverim she'enon kvuin. That we're going to explain in Halacha 12, which is some sort of blindness. How do you know an animal is blind? Do they send in front of the eye doctor and cover up this eye and tell him to read? You can tell an animal is blind sometimes. How do you know an animal is blind? What makes you realize an animal is blind?
Things.
Yes. Or sometimes it just doesn't notice what it should be noticing. Like all the other animals say it should be scary. They see a predator far away, or they see food coming. Like animals are animals. They know that when Farmer Brown comes with a big hay bale, so already the cows start making their way over to the feeding area. But there's one cow that just doesn't seem to notice. So it must be it has some sort of blindness. There's 4 other diseases. You don't, if it's this disease, you shouldn't bring it as a korban. Not because of moon, but because it's not the choicest. The choicest of your promises to God. Make a promise to God, that's a neder, so you have to keep it. He has in the white of the eye a wart, but it doesn't have the hair. We said that a wart with a hair, that's an actual moon. This is just not nice. It has severely blemished horns, but still has the inside, the zachars. Maybe they'll eventually grow back even. But this is still a disease that you shouldn't, that disqualifies this thing from being offered, but not a moon. If those inner parts of the animal, we said in the throat, it's similar to tonsils. I don't think it's exactly the tonsils, but like I said, you see them in the back of the animal's throat if they're blemished, so they shouldn't offer this animal as a korban. And the last one is im nigmemu chitav apnimiot. Nifgemu. The first one is nifgemu. The second is nigmemu. Okay, one means they're missing, and one means that they're cut. Okay, Nifgam is usually, that they're cut in some way. Nigmu means something is missing. If these things exist in animals that are already been sanctified, so the animal can't become a korban, but also shouldn't be redeemed. Ella yiruad shipol bahem mum. Like I said, Chazal said yiruad shiyistavu. V'im hikrivan yira'eli shehurtzu. But here's the difference. Why are they not mum? Because they're not actual mums. If he actually brought them as a korban, then they are accepted. They've been accepted after the fact. Fifth halacha. Now, guys, this is the ninth halacha according to the printings,
Right.
and according to Machon Mamre, this is just the fifth halacha. Very strange. Okay, so whatever. It all depends on the kisvei yad. A lot of the things that you have Rambam, Rashi, Shulchan Aruch, major works of the Rishonim, that they prepared them for printing, and the printers took liberties. And over the years, in various other printers, they added notes. They changed things around. One of the big works they do is, I've seen also someone put up a scholarly article there about Rashi. They're discovering kisvei yad of Rashi, or the first printings of Rashi, and it turns out that people add midrashim here and there and add notes to Rashi. You've seen that? A lot of our Rashis have been corrupted.
Right. Sometimes in textual critical Rashis, they'll note that this doesn't appear in manuscripts, and it's probably not original.
Yeah. I thought one of the biggest scandals I found out was, that fifth parak of Pirkei Avos doesn't exist. We discussed this earlier this year. The sixth parak of Pirkei Avos is not, obviously, they say this isn't the parak of Pirkei Avos. That's why Rambam doesn't mention a sixth parak of Pirkei Avos. We know that that's just prices that they put together.
Right.
But the end of the fifth parak, that whole thing, Ben Arba'im Levina, Ben Shlosh, etc., all those things, that's also not part of the Mishnah. You know that? It exists in none of the Kisvei Yad. It just appeared in the Vilna edition. It's a very late addition to the Mishnah. It's not there. Yeah, you're surprised I'm telling you this. It's not part of the Mishnah. Look, here's a Nezikin, open it up. And look, there's Kisvei Yad available online. It's just one of those things. They just added a whole Mishnah, whole cloth. Everybody thinks it's like one of the most basic. Art Scroll, I remember the Art Scroll Youth, Pirkei Avos, has 2 pages across with beautiful illustrations. I love growing up as a kid. And it turns out that's not a Mishnah. It's just someone threw it in there.
Art Scroll.
Well, Art Scroll is not Art Scroll's fault. It's hundreds of years before Art Scroll. Just saying, it's not in there.
But Art Scroll doesn't really.
It's not critical.
Care about text critical.
They did some things when they got into Rashbam. They got involved in stuff, and then they censored it. Yeah,
censored things.
yeah. So they did it, and I don't know. They are aware of stuff. They ignore it. They also mentioned that they are doing, when they did when looked at Rishonim. Mossad Rav Kook puts out Rishonim. Who is it? There's fake Ritvas and the real Ritvas and the Miuchas and all that.
Yeah.
So they mention in their Akdama, we're using the real Rishonim. Sometimes we'll mention like Miuchas, and which is the MHK, like the real one.
Yeah.
Now you know it. So at least they do that. It's not like they changed the Vilna edition. I used to say that if you used Art Scroll, or you should be using the Rum edition. I finished Avodah Zarah when I was in Chutz La'aretz back in 2012. I finished it. I was learning it there. Got back to Eretz Yisrael. I opened up a Steinsaltz on a whim. Steinsaltz has whole sections from Avodah Zarah and Sanhedrin that don't exist. Sansino mentions them in the notes.
Right.
Sansino doesn't put them back in. So you didn't finish Avodah Zarah or Sanhedrin if you didn't use the Steinsaltz. You have to use Steinsaltz in order to say that you finished the Masechta, or you get yourself some Ksav Yad. But if you're using Vilna and anything based on it, like the Art Scroll, then you did not finish it. Steinsaltz, Kisvei Yad. He put back stuff.
It is text critical.
Yeah. So Steinsaltz doesn't mention the criticism. He just puts back the censored parts.
Oh wow.
So if you didn't, like I said, if you didn't use Steinsaltz for Avodah Zarah and Sanhedrin, probably some other things, then you didn't use it. But now there are printings here in Eretz Yisrael where they put back in the bottom or something like that, pieces missing from Sanhedrin, Avodah Zarah, etc. If you put back the missing pieces, you still have words here and there that have been changed.
Right.
And in Brachos even, you have things, one word changes the whole thing. It's been Christianized.
Right.
Because they're Mishumadim who made these changes. So get yourself a good edition. Like I said, I thought it was scandalous. We were just talking about Sarbat
What's the
Teves.
best edition for learning authentic Gemara?
Most basic ones, without even getting into all the science, the Steinsaltz like behind us. He put back everything and most of the stuff you need to be. They got a lot of criticism. I think it's because he did such a good job that he got such heat. I'm very much a fan of Steinsaltz. I don't look, even though they're sitting behind me, like these Art Scrolls.
Right.
God bless them, but they're not mine. I didn't put them there. I like the Steinsaltz. And this edition also over there, I think it's the Oz V'Hadar of just the regular Vilna. That's great because we showed them in the back. They made those nice and accessible, and the print is very good. So that's what I've been using mostly. Yeah. It's all great.
Right.
I just wish they'd put the poskim on this side also. So we have Shas, Yerushalmis are down here, we have Mishneh over there, but I have to go all the way over there to get the Rambams. And we need, by the way, if you're looking for donations to Kol Tzion area, we could use Rav Kapach's edition of the Rambam and a few volumes of the Yad Pshuta. We have the Frankel, and we have Korain, almost all of it, and of course we have the Makbili, a few copies of the Makbili, thanks to my grandmother, but we're still missing something. So if your dedication opportunities are still available. Okay, next thing. Halacha tet. They did an avera with a holy animal. It had already been dedicated, but they did an avera with it. What kind of averas? The really bad averas. Oh, well, yeah, it's been sodomized, or they worshipped it. Oshe Misa es Adam be'ed echad. It killed a person, but there's only one witness to this. Oh, al pia be'alim. The owners admitted it killed something. That's not a witness. Low krevat should not be offered. The loan if date that is not redeemed. Ad shiva leid la mum kavu until it develops a permanent blemish, like the big 73 on the list. Let's say an animal has one of the trephus that prevent it from being eaten. So you know that one of the things they first did in the Beis Hamikdash is they made sure the animal didn't have a mum. And then they bring it to the Kohen. Let's say the Kohen's doing the slaughtering, the Yisrael doesn't know what he's doing. So the Kohen's going to slaughter, the Kohen's going to catch the blood, right? So the animal's blemish free. But then they open it up and they find that what? It's a treifa. This happens all the time with korbanos. That turns out the korban is a treifa. Asur legabe Mizbeach. So it can't be put on the Mizbeach. Harehu Omer, Hakriveodo fecha. Hayirtzecha o Yisafanecha. Prophet Malachi was criticizing the Jews in early Second Temple times who did not hold their korbanos to a high standard. They had the Kayin problem. They brought the lesser things. And then the Navi asked them rhetorically, bring it as a tribute to your governor. Do you think he'll accept it? The Pecha at the time was, by the way, a Davidian. It says Rubavel ben Shaltiel was the first Pachat of Yehuda. So it's a Persian governor. It means that he's in charge he's put in charge by the Persian emperor, but he could do whatever he wants. He's given blank check. So Rashi says, why don't they just call him king, vassal king of the Persians, because he was a vassal. That's exactly. They didn't let him say you can be king. And when Nehemiah came around and he had authority, one of his accusers say that we're gonna go write letters to King Darius or whoever it is and say that you're plotting to appoint yourself king. You're about to declare yourself king. You're just a pecha. Okay, but the point was they used to bring tribute to him, just like the Romans. What they had, the procurator. That's how they pronounce it, procurator, who sat in Syria. He was yes. They had a guy like that. He didn't be called king, but he had his Roman province. Even though it's not fit for sacrifice. Ein podinota. We do not let be redeemed. Shein podinota kachim. We don't redeem sacrificial animals la chilon la klavim in order to be fed to dogs. Why? It's a treifa. The only thing you could do with it is to feed it to the dogs once you slaughter it, and you can't redeem an animal from hektish in order to make it dog food. Ella yiru ad shiyamutu v'kavru. Instead, these animals, remember, a behemoth's kachim that developed the treifus is if they didn't kill it, by the way, and discovered treifa, they realize it's a treifa from whatever happened to it. Sometimes you could tell a treifa. Well, what's a treifa that you could tell from the outside? It's been attacked by a predatory animal. Okay, it's been bitten by the wolf or something. So technically speaking, it's not. It has a scar and it has a wound on its leg. It's not a mum, but it's going to cause the animal to die. So that's a treifus. Ela yiracha yimusu v'kavru. So it should be put out to pasture until it dies, and then it should be buried. Notice the burying is critical. So certain things in halacha need to be burned. Some things in halacha need to be buried. That's their proper disposal. Nishchata v'dim says treifus. Now they slaughtered the animal. They found out it's kachim. It didn't have mum. They slaughtered as a treifus. Arezo tetzei levesa sreifa. Unlike, let's say, treifas that you have at your slaughterhouse or in your backyard, you can't feed it to whoever. You can't sell it to a goy. Give it to the dog, whatever it is. Not to equate goyim with dogs. I'm just saying that there's certain standards. That's what the slaughterhouse does. If it's halachic treifa, so they sell it to the non-kosher slaughterhouse. They just process that meat. But sometimes you do want to give the dogs they do make dog food. Some high quality dog foods. They use meat also. People appreciate their dogs. Some people appreciate animals. They give them actually good quality food that could be given to people. So this goes to Beis HaSreifa. Beis HaSreifa is outside the Beis Mikdash where they burn all the disqualified korbanos. Let's say they find one of the internal organs is missing when they cut it open. It has no spleen, no gallbladder, whatever it is. Even though this doesn't cause a trephus, not everything does. It has but one kidney. Where'd the kidney go? It's not trephus. Oh, shenita al. It's missing its spleen. Harezo asura Mizbeach b'tisarev. They can't put it on the Mizbeach. They brought it to the base of Mikdash. The Kohen caught the blood and through the blood, and as they're going through it, now they're cutting it open on one of those tables. They find, hey, this is missing something here. So they take it out of the Zara and they burn it.
That's not a treifa.
It's not a trephus.
It's internal mum.
Yeah, it's missing an aver panimi.
Is that a mum?
Well, it's not a moon that they could have seen visibly.
Right.
It's not one of the 73 that disqualified it from being korban. They slaughtered it as a korban. They threw its blood on the Mizbeach. Then they find it. Oh my God, it has a trefa inside, or it's just missing something that doesn't even make it a trefa. It's missing something that didn't trefa it, but still they shouldn't put it on the Mizbeach. Very interesting. Lo mibdei shi balas mum, like you just said, not because of balas mum. Shein chisaron b'shebifni mum. Remember, the things missing inside, that's not a mum. Mums are visible from the outside, except those things in the throat, the chitel that we mentioned. Ela mipnei she'ein makrivim chaser klal. Anything that's missing anything is not brought as a korban. Shneimar timimim yu lachem. They should be flawless. See, timimim yu lachem is mentioned a few times in Bamidbar. So you have a thing. It says three psukim that Machon Mamre brings. The whole yater kechaser, or anything extra, an extra tchol, an extra kidney. Okay, that's like a chaser. Lefichach im nimsala shalosh klayot o shnei tcholim psula. See, I remember the Rambam's word: an extra kidney or an extra spleen. Three kidneys, two spleens. Yeah, even people could live without these things. By the way, you know that they say. I think it's a very good thing. Many of us have been genetically tested to see if we can give kidneys. So it doesn't come up. Most of us will not have to donate a kidney in our lives, but sometimes they find someone who's a genetic match. The most likely genetic match a person could have, by the way, to whom he could donate a kidney with the least problems is close relatives. So it's a very good thing if you ever have a close relative who needs a kidney. For you, it's quite safe. You know, you could live without one kidney. If just fine, if a person needs a kidney, he could die without it. So it's a big mitzvah. In Chazal's days, they didn't even have a concept of such a mitzvah to donate organs. You know, so nowadays a person's dead, unfortunately. So you should definitely. I'm gonna plug for HOD, the good one, the good HOD. Okay, halachic organ donors. That's a good thing. You're already a goner. So why not help someone? So register to be an organ donor, and you can get the card. You have to get on driver's license. Many of us have done such a thing. Hopefully, it won't come up. You know, we hope to live long, full lives, and by then our organs aren't going to help anybody if we pass away. But if chas v'shalom, God has already decided that you have to go early, so you should at least help someone else. Go out with the mitzvah. What?
Potentially halachic problems of donating something that's not for pikuach nefesh. I know in America there's
So
controversy.
you're not allowed to put yourself in danger if it's not a danger to the other person.
Right.
I'm talking about pikuach nefesh. A person who doesn't have a kidney, that's pikuach nefesh. You die with it. Oh yeah, you can live with the machine, dialysis. You know, that's not an alternative. That's not a life.
Right.
And of course, you know, it shortens their life tremendously. So yeah, you should definitely consider this. And if you could donate organs even while alive, you know, we give blood. Because I'll never had such a thing. Because I'll just had bloodletting, which is, you know, now that's bunk. But it's a good thing to give blood. It's a good thing to donate blood marrow. Whatever you can do to help someone else. We know it's safe because we have the living proof. We have many people who have done these things. Many of us have donated blood just fine, and we could even donate kidneys. So we should be prepared to do such a big mitzvah. Because I'll never even dreamed of this mitzvah. Okay. Ezehu Samrim Fuim. Let's get this thing. We already mentioned the guy who the animal that has temporary blindness, right? Should open up the window here. Over there. Otherwise, you guys didn't see what happened, so open up. Okay. Permanent blindness. Kol sheshash monim yom v'lo ra'ah. The animal hasn't seen for 80 days. Now, this is like if the animal, of course, had an eye injury, like, you know, it suffered, it got its eyes poked out. So that's a chasser. That it shouldn't be a korban. It says any chasser is a korban. It shouldn't be a korban. We're talking about an animal that it has its eyes, but it's just not seeing. So it's been like this for 80 days. Uvod kinoto shlosha pamim. So we check the animal. Open up that window also. We check the animal 3 times. Bayom shiva vesrim me'et sher yishubo. On day 27, once the farmer realized, hey, this cow seems to be blind, so check it on day 27. Uvyom arba avachamishim on day 45. Uvyom shmonim on day 80. Okay, that's when you check it. Im ra'ah monim lo shmonim me'et shepaska riyah. If it sees, then we give it another 80 days to check it. Yo, Rabbi Sai, hey. Yeah, thanks. The kid had an accident here. So how do you know that this discharge from the eyes is a permanent problem? It eats wet grass. That is, how does grass grow here in Israel? During the rainy season, at the beginning of the rainy season, let's say like my yard, there's nothing there. It's just dirt. And then the rain begins to fall. And around now, grasses start to sprout. And if I don't touch the lawn and mow it, we'll get all sorts of wild grasses there, such that by Adar, I'll have to mow it. It could grow quite tall. So those are still green and wet, as Chazal call them. And then the rain stops right around Pesach time. And if you don't cut the grass by Tishrei, what happens? There hasn't been rain, so now it's dry, okay? And it becomes thorn-like and everything. And you're going to get rid of it or whatever. It's going to go bye-bye. And then we're going to start the process. It's going to be dirt again by Kislev. It's just dirt. And then the rains are going to come and cause it to grow grass again. So animals eat what's naturally there. So animals are used to having nice, fresh grasses to eat here in the land of Israel and other areas when it says Adar and the first half of Nisan. That's when the grass is perfect because the rain is still there and it's growing well. And then it eats normal food, which is what? In Elul and Chatzi Tishrei, it's eating dry grasses. Okay, so these animals are used to eating these grasses at these seasons. And I'm sure like animals from New Zealand, it's the exact opposite because, they have, they're the other side of the equator. Vilonis rapes, but it didn't get cured from this. Okay, it still has this eye discharge problem, even though it's eating the healthy food that it needs to eat at the right time. So that's a discharge that's not going to go away. It's permanent. How much of this fresh grasses that I have to eat during Adar and Chatzi Nisan, the first half, and the Yaveshim Bismana Yaveshim, the dry grasses during the dry season? Gregarious or Yoser. Gregarious is a date, full-size date, right? Not a fig. Get them confused. Remember the acronym, the mnemonic? Which one's a fig and which one's a date? You could date tomorrow, but you can't fig te'ina. Fig is not a verb, right? You've heard that? That's also again, Rabbi Kruger told us that one. Okay, so
Rabbi Kruger seems like quite the character.
I haven't mentioned in a long time. He taught us in like 6th grade, but yeah, he was a character, and I was a character in class also. It's a shame. So you don't appreciate the Torah study you could have done when you're younger. We wasted a lot of time. I wasted more time than you guys, by the way. I was a much bigger waste of time than you guys. Okay. More this much or more. Before the first meal, what's the first meal? What's the Suda Rishona? Who's it talking about? It's talking about the shepherd? No, it talks about the animal goes to graze normally. Well, how does shepherding and raising animals work? Like Yaakov Avinu said, first give them water, then go take them to pasture. So if you're a shepherd, you have to take your animals for a walk a little bit, and then you have to take them to a place where they can eat a lot of grass, and then you have to bring them to a source of water so you can give them to drink, right? You guys ever work with shepherds? See, the Arabs here have, you go to some wild place, they bring all the goats to the spring and they drink there, and then they bring them to a place where there's something for them to eat. So that's what they used to do. So they have to do this, and during these 3 months to check the animal to see what's going on. Nowadays we have veterinarians, and by law you see that at the slaughterhouses and also the chicken processing plants there's a vet, not just a mashgiach. There's a guy who's actually checking for signs of diseases in the animals. So I'm sure there's other ways to check if the animal has a permanent eye discharge problem. Or even nowadays, they could give the animal some simple antibiotics, topical antibiotics to get rid of this problem. Okay. In the olden days, you had conjunctivitis. What would you do? You have to suffer through it. Nowadays, we just have a few eye drops and you're done.
Right.
Yeah, and all sorts of other infections. We have internal infections. What do? We take an antibiotic pill, and after like 2 doses, you're already good to go. Yeah, they'll keep you on it for a week, but we have a lot. We save ourselves a lot of trouble, a lot of heartache, and a lot of deaths just by simple antibiotics. And it has to eat these every day after it has a drink. And it has to be free in the field, free range, what time that it's eating. Why? Some people pen up the animals when they feed them. By the way, they say this is cruel. The way they feed animals for the slaughter. It says that we're very unethical farming practices nowadays. Some of these animals, these chickens, the havdil, the pigs that they do, they're raised in cages their entire lives. They never got to go anywhere, and they get fatter, and they just feed them or even force feed them. So obviously, your animals aren't going to be healthy that way. They say they plump up the chickens also. Like the chickens can barely walk because their bones aren't strong enough to hold them up the way they fatten them.
Right.
You've seen this? Yeah, it's terrible stuff. So yeah, I don't know. You don't have to become a vegetarian, but if you have a more ethical attitude toward your meat eating, so that's good for you. The lo tia levada, it shouldn't be allowed. Ella hi uvema cheret litzevet ima. You guys have litzevet, not litzvot. It means litzevet.
We have litzvot.
Do you have litzvot? Oh, okay. Let me see what it is. I thought it was litzevet. By the way, you know what it means? It means the animal needs friendship. Animals are slightly social. How social are sheep? Very social. They all hang out together. They hang out in flocks. They're not like those, let's say, some certain predators, lions, tigers. Tigers are very much, keep out of my territory. I don't want to see any other tigers around here. Some cats also get into fights. You ever see cats get into fights? Dogs fight over food. Do goats and sheep fight over food ever? And as a matter of fact, they huddle together to keep warm, right? Dogs also they live together, but also sometimes they fight over stuff. Goats and cows and sheep don't fight. They need each other, and
cows have best friends.
Yes, and their calves stay with them. It's like, how do you know which is the mother of this calf? What do you mean the calf is mamish stuck to its mother until it grows up? Okay, so the animals are social. In order to keep them healthy, what he's saying here is that you have to give them normal ability to walk around freely with other animals of their kind. Okay, so nowadays, yeah, they're not raising animals the way they should. Imna asala kol elu. If they did all this for the animal, v'lo nitraped, it did not get healed. Hare elu kvin vadai. So now you know that the discharge is a permanent thing; it's a permanent moon. V'im chaser achat mikol elu. If they didn't do all these checks, hare is a suffix. Now it's a suffix. V'ena kreva v'lo niftate. So it cannot be offered as a korban, but also cannot be redeemed. Ketzah. Now let's see. What's a suffix? They didn't do the checks properly. It ate the grass that it's supposed to during other season, Chatzi Nisan, basically the springtime. And then it ate the dry grass in the rest of Nisan and in Iyar, when it's always drying out. Shanim says, it did eat these things in 3 months in the proper order. And ate the grogeris worth after it ate, but before it drank. That's the opposite order. The animal was tied up. Shaita levado was left alone. Okay, the way they farm animals now. It was just stuck in the garden. That means the open area next to the city. It wasn't allowed out to actually free range, and it didn't cure itself. It might not have cured just because you didn't do it right. Kol elu suffik vuno over him. Now you still have a suffix if it's a permanent discharge or not. So if he does an avera, he puts another mum into it. A person shouldn't give a mum to an animal, but it says he inflicts a mum on an animal. That's an avera. He should be punished for it. In this case, the animal's a suffix mum, so now the suffix that he's the one who inflicted the mum, so he's not to be lashed. Last halakha. So now it did eat properly, like the check, like we said it should do. The load not paid, but it didn't get healed. So now it has a permanent mum. Yesh badavar safek. There's still a safek in this case. Im lemafreya he balat mum may ate shabola mayim. Is she considered a balat mum, this animal, from the time when the discharge started, O me'et shenishas shenityashu mi rapota or rapota. The aleph is silent, right? Oh, mirafuata. They said that. Okay, because sometimes a raputa mirafuata means it's cure. Instead of a verb, it's a noun here. You have mirafuata. Okay.
With my peak.
On my PK. Yeah, well, raputa. Both cases have a mapik. Okay, they should have a mapik. Rapotota or harifu ashala. They both have a mapik, whether it's a noun or a verb. The point is, the owners have given up trying to cure this animal. The fichach habodeata kodem shinashu me refuata, as you guys have it. The one who wants to redeem it before they've given up hope. Then he benefited from this pidyon money after they'd given up. It's a suffix if he actually benefited from temple property, trespassing. Me'ila is a whole subject that we're going to see a whole section of halachos about. So suffix me'ila, he's not going to get punished for it. Korban me'ila, as we shall see. If he did an act of me'ila vadai, so he would have to bring a korban me'ila. There's a punishment for such a thing. Well, actually, I wouldn't say bring a korban as a punishment. It's a tikkun. So let's take some perspective here. Just see the beginning of the next halach because we should see this. I read this kol eina mumin poslim ba'of. Okay, I added the word kol. Why? Because what's birds? Those are turtle doves and pigeons. It can be korbanot. And he says here, if you just read this line over here, there's no such thing as mumin for oaf. Right? There's no mumin that affect these animals, and it says no, not all mumin. That is, there are some. There's not a lot. It applies both to males and females. As it says tamim zachar. It says tamim zachar. You would have thought, oh, just zachar. No, it could be nekiva also. Ela b'vhema vilvad. Okay, we only have mumim in behemoths. Bamedvar mamurim. Oh, so now you're going to modify this. Mumim apply to behemoths, not to ophos. No, b'medvar mamurim, b'mumim katanim, the small mumim. But ophos could have large ones. Aval of shiavash gapo. Its back became dried out. Oh, so nismeiteno, eye was blinded. They poked out its eye. Oh, nikta araglo, it's missing a leg. Asur legabe mizbeach. It is forbidden to bring this to the altar as sacrifice. Shein makrivim chaser klal. Once again, you don't bring an animal that's missing anything. So that type of mum does exist in birds. If you'd have a trephus in a bird, of which there's a long list, so a treif of bird shouldn't be brought as a korban. Harezen if sal lo korban. So it's not exactly, it's not 100% that there's nothing that disqualifies a bird as a korban. So we'll stop there. We'll wish everybody good Shabbos. I didn't see any. Let me see in the chat if questions came in. Now this is highly technical stuff, so normally people don't have questions about it. Guys, you guys, what do you think about this? And we'll sign off there.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.